is, of course, a phenomenal player. We're now joined by Brandon Marcello, who's been really good to be a part of our show whenever he can be a part of it, SEC Media Days. And, Brandon, thanks for your time. So Nick Saban goes to what? Italy. He likes carrot cake. What were some things, and we were having fun with that earlier in the show, a couple of things that from him that kind of stood out to you today?
Well, I think that reading between the lines, he's very much embraced the idea that Alabama is not the favorite in the SEC this year, and he's weaponizing that to get his team going. And I say that because of the players that we're talking today. J.C. Latham was saying that they feel disrespected by the media and the other fans and their expectations. And I straight up asked him, I go, what do you think when people say that they believe that Georgia is the new standard in the SEC? And he said, I don't think that. So it's you're seeing a little bit of a spicier, more motivated Alabama program this year. And secondly, I'll say this. He's in no hurry to name a starting quarterback. And really, we haven't seen something like this only one other time in the last, really decade, where he's had a quarterback competition that might not be settled when they go into week one. So very rare preseason picture here that Nick Saban's painting for everybody.
Well, I mean, that's the reason, right, that they're not picked first in the SEC West, or people are doubting them, is because they are bouncing around with the quarterback, and he's been so consistent at that position, just one after the other for a decade.
That too. Exactly. I also think that a lot of us have had our brains poisoned, so to speak, by the dominance of Georgia, and we finally have seen them turn the corner and be that program that everybody hoped they would be. I think also some of us tend to think that maybe Kirby Smart took the Nick Saban blueprint while he was obviously at Alabama and has maybe perfected it in this era of the transfer portal. Because I say that he doesn't lose players to the transfer portal, and when they have to go to the portal, we only get 2 or 3 guys, and they're always guys that fill in immediate needs, and they're not have to lean on it. Meanwhile, look at Alabama. Nick Saban, he's a defensive coach, obviously. That's what he's known for. He's known as a guy who coaches the secondary and develops those guys. And you know what Nick Saban had to do this offseason? He had to go to the transfer portal and get 2 defensive backs from group of 5 teams. I would not have expected that a year or 2 ago. And I think that Nick Saban, recruiting-wise, some of these players he's had, especially in that secondary the last couple of years, they didn't quite pan out. And that's a question about their evaluation process. I'm not saying it's gone bad overnight or anything like that, but maybe it's lost a half a step here, while Georgia was not only gaining speed, but bypassed them in the SEC.
When it comes to Hugh Freeze, I know that they spoke, yesterday. Saw a couple of just clips of him. Seems to be back in his element. I think no one would deny that the guy's a great coach. It's a question of, can he hold all the parts of the program together? Do you sense a guy who's learned some lessons and is back and better for it? What just kind of your sense of Auburn and Hugh Freeze now at the helm?
Yeah, I think Hugh Freeze was very much low-key at media days, more so than in the past. He's kind of more even-keeled. And listen, that's kind of the sign of a veteran coach who's been through all this before, and he's been to media days before. He's obviously coached in the SEC before. But the way he was talking sounded a lot like when I went to the SEC media days for his first season at Ole Miss. He was kind of downplaying some things and saying, hey, I know that this team's better than the one we inherited just from the transfer portal, but I've got no idea what our team's going to look like, and we're just getting going here, and I don't know what to expect. I thought Hugh Freeze handled everything pretty well as far as just saying, listen, I'm not saying I got low expectations, but, man, we inherited a situation that was pretty dire, and it's going to take some time, guys. I know everybody's excited because of my past and what I've been able to do on the field and all that, but this is completely new and different, and I'm having to adjust myself as a coach.
So, seeing that he's at Auburn, the least patient place maybe on God's green earth, how does he manage expectations from – I mean, look, that's one thing to say it to SEC media. It's another thing to have to tell it to Auburn over and over and over again.
You're exactly right, because he won't hear it right now because he hasn't played a game. But, you know, as soon as he loses a game, he's going to start hearing it. He's going to hear it from different factions among the boosters and the fans, whether it's directly or through intermediaries. And his personal relationships are going to be tested. He's going to have to fight some battles behind the scenes there at Auburn. That happens quite a bit. But I'll say this, you know, previous coaches there, Brian Harsin and obviously Gus Malzahn, probably not as personable as Hugh Freeze is. And I think that will certainly buy him some more stock, so to speak, from the fan base and also those boosters by proxy. And I think he's got a kind of a longer leash there as a result, because I think he's going to be able to utilize his personal relationships and development there to kind of maybe keep those dogs from barking as loudly as they might usually.
Brandon, South Carolina ended the year very well. It seemed like it all kind of fell together for Beamer and the team. And they have momentum when it comes to what they're doing with recruiting. Of course, that's the classes for next year. How legitimate and validated are they? Your opinion about maybe taking the next step?
Well, listen, if they're going to take the next step, they need to stop being inconsistent week to week. Man, watching them in person last year against Arkansas, their offensive line I thought was maybe the worst in the SEC. And I was like, how the heck are they going to get to 6 wins this year? And then I started questioning, well, is it the offensive line or is Spencer Rattler actually as bad as some people have been pumping up for whatever reason at quarterback when he was at OU? Then they improved throughout the season. The offensive line got better. I don't know how. And Rattler kind of got poised and put everything together and lifted the players around him and made them play better. They beat Tennessee. They beat Clemson on the road, but there were also some head-scratching games and some decisions there. Where's the consistency? I think the consistency comes from building more depth. And for them, that's the recruiting. And Beamer's been doing a fantastic job of recruiting and also in the transfer portal. I still think that they're like a year away, 2024, 2025, from being a team that's a little bit more consistent and challenging to maybe be a 9-win program. And with the schedule they've got this year, you know, I was talking to a reporter today actually about Carolina. I think the floor for them is probably 5 wins and the ceiling 9. And I think that Carolina fans should probably be happy with 6 or 7 wins because they got to go to Tennessee, which is going to be a huge revenge game for Tennessee. And I just don't see how they win there. And they've got Georgia early in the season, and that's on the road too. Very difficult schedule.
I guess, Brandon, one of the more interesting, stories from the start of media days was, or the most talked about certainly, was Jimbo Fisher and his comments about play calling and how Bobby Petrino will fit into the grand scheme of things. I know there's a lot of takes on how to take that whole situation, but where do you stand on Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Petrino, and how all that's going to work and unpack in College Station this season?
Well, I asked Jimbo Fisher, I straight up asked him, I said, is this a volatile situation? And that got him going a little bit, like volatile, you know. But, you know, it is a volatile situation because those are two very fiery personalities. And not just those two. Remember, you got Steve Adazio in that room, too, as offensive line coach. And he is very vocal and opinionated. You got a lot of former head coaches on that staff who are accustomed to making the calls. And Bobby Petrino has not been an assistant coach in 21 years. He has not had to answer to anybody on game days other than to himself and his voices in his head in 21 years. And now he's got to answer to Jimbo Fisher, who all of a sudden is going, yeah, he might be calling plays, he might not. You know, we hired him for a reason. Just being weird, really wishy-washy with all that. And, you know, what happens, say, you know, midway through the season and, you know, they got 3 straight 3-and-outs and what Bobby's calling is not necessarily working and Jimbo takes it over or whatever. There's going to be opportunities there to test that theory of that it is a volatile situation. And you know, Bobby Petrino, as I said, is a very fiery guy. His rants behind the scenes previously at Arkansas and Louisville are legendary among his former players. And, you know, I don't see how that all of a sudden has changed.
Oh, I'm sure that they'll get along famously.
If they get along, that's a problem. They need to be at each other's throats.
Yeah,
push each other.
But, Brandon, Billy Napier spoke today as well. He's got a really interesting situation at Florida, in that this is a coach coming in very highly thought of for what he did at Louisiana, and an up-and-comer, and comes from the Saban tree, but he's not stepping into the Florida that everybody kind of knows, and they have quarterback problems. What do you think he's going to have to slog through in year 2 there in Gainesville?
You know, it's interesting. A small group of us got to talk to him off to the side this morning when they arrived, and he was talking about how this is a program he feels so much better for year 2 because I think he said he had 93% of his roster, including newcomers, on campus in January. So he's already been able to develop, change these guys, and get it in their heads what to expect this upcoming season for the last 8-9 months. That's huge for him. He said we did not get that luxury last year. They brought in some pieces that help build that depth. And he also said, you know, we made mistakes, not just as a team, but also myself as a coach. And I asked him, like, what were those growing moments? What did you learn about yourself? And he said some of the process things that I had to do differently going forward. And he feels so much better about that, and how the players are more confident in him and that staff. I thought those were really kind of eye-opening to me to see him be so open to, hey, this is kind of where we went wrong, and this is what we're doing now to improve in year 2.
Brandon, what's going to be more disappointing, that the Pac-12 does not have a media deal in place when they start their media days, or that Deion won't be there?
Can the Pac-12 do anything right? It seems like it's just left and right. It's something bad's happening. Like, they don't have TV deal. All right, fine. But your absolute primetime entertainment, Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, is not going to be at media day. And to be honest with you, he's the only reason why a lot of people are going to be going to Pac-12 media days as far as reporters. That's usually a lightly attended event. I'm sure it's going to be much more attended this year, but now Deion's not going to be there, and it's just not going to have that pop, that pizzazz. And again, as you mentioned, no TV deal to kind of lean on and pump up. And then also just take it for they might as well be conducting this media day on the moon, because, and I say that because it's just like, they can't get out of their own way. You're going to have a media day. You do it on a Friday. You're doing it in Pacific time. So by the time anybody says anything that's worth reporting or being out there or on TV, it's past noon on the East Coast on a Friday. People are leaving work. No one's paying attention to you. And you're only doing a media day for one day. So you got an 8-hour window, and during that 8 hours is the least amount of time that people are actually paying attention to the news on a Friday afternoon. It seems like everything the Pac-12 does just makes you scratch your head. It's so easy to fix some of these things, and they just can't get out of their own way. But also, I'll say this. It isn't like this is a decision that was made that Coach Prime just can't attend because he's having surgery.
Right.
He had to have this surgery before camp starts, and I hope he gets to be better and get well. But man, I'm not sure I'm going to miss that opportunity to see him at prime time in Pac-12 in Vegas.
So when George Kliavkoff comes out and says, "Look, we already told you no media deal," somebody's still got to ask him about how it's going. How do you think that winds up? Because I don't know if he'll be able to answer any questions not related to the media deal, because it doesn't seem like there's that much else going on with the league.
I think he's going to say that they feel like they're in a really good spot with it, and they're going to get the type of money that they're all hoping for, and that the deal will be announced soon. Despite everything you've heard since February, everybody going 2 weeks from now, no, a week from now. I think he's actually going to go up there and be firm. Go, listen, I've been quiet. He has not talked about this himself. It's been his president. I think he's going to try and show some leadership finally with this and say, it's coming soon. We kind of know what our money situation is going to be. It's going to be comparable to the Big 12. We feel like we're in a good spot. My presidents tell me they feel like they're in a good spot. We can't wait to announce it. Any other questions?
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate your time. As always, SEC Media Days in Nashville. Also a couple of nuggets about the Pac-12 without Deion this Friday, and also no media deal, but feeling as if George Kliavkoff, and boy, the Pac-12 and the members sure do need to hear that, something perhaps emphatic and strong from the commissioner. We come back, John Machota,